The banker's office smelled like cigars and old money. Ethan stood with his hat in his hands, dust still coating his boots from the morning ride, and tried not to let them see how badly his jaw was clenched. "I need 3 months," he said. "Just 3 months, and I can turn it around." Martin Driscoll, president of Frontier Trust and Loan, didn't even look up from his papers. Fat fingers moved across the desk, shuffling documents like they were cards in a game Ethan had already lost. "You've had 18 months, Cross. You've missed 4 payments. The cattle market didn't recover like you promised. The irrigation project failed. Your foreman quit." Driscoll finally looked at him, and there wasn't a shred of sympathy in those pig eyes. "You're not turning anything around. You're drowning." Ethan's hands tightened on the brim of his hat. "I can make it work. I just need—" "You need a miracle." That came from the other man in the room. Victor Hale. Tall, silver-haired, dressed like he'd just stepped out of a San Francisco drawing room instead of a backwater frontier town. He leaned against the wall near the window, watching Ethan the way a hawk watches a rabbit. "Or," Victor continued, voice smooth as poison, "you need to be practical." "Practical?" "Marriage." The word landed like a stone in still water. Ethan stared at him. "What?" "Clara Vance." Victor pushed off the wall, hands in his pockets, casual as Sunday morning. "You know her?" "I know of her." Everyone did. The spinster daughter of a dead shopkeeper, 26 years old and still unmarried. There were rumors she'd turned down 3 proposals, scared men off with her sharp tongue and sharper mind. No curves worth mentioning, no dowry worth taking, a woman the town had given up on. "She has assets," Victor said. "She has a crumbling general store and debts of her own. She has liquidity you don't. And more importantly," Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes, "but this more. She has motivation. Her creditors are circling too. Marry her, combine resources, and suddenly you both have breathing room. 6 months of operating capital, maybe more if you're smart about it." Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You've already talked to her." "I've talked to her creditors. They're willing to restructure if she marries someone stable, someone with land." The way Victor said it made it clear what he thought of Ethan's stability. "This is insane." Driscoll finally spoke again, voice flat. "This is business. We're offering you a way out, Cross. A legal arrangement, binding for 1 year minimum. After that, you can go your separate ways if you want. But right now, today, this is the only offer on the table." He tapped the foreclosure notice sitting between them. "Otherwise, Iron Ridge goes to auction in 48 hours. 48? You said I had until the end of the month." We moved up the timeline. Driscoll's face showed nothing. Market conditions. Ethan wanted to put his fist through the desk, through Driscoll's face, through the whole damn system that had brought him here. But his knuckles were already scarred from the last time he'd let anger make his decisions, and it hadn't changed a thing. "Where is she?" His voice came out rough. "Waiting downstairs," Victor said. "She's already agreed to meet." Of course she had. The woman sitting in the lobby looked like she'd been carved from New England granite and left out in the sun too long. Clara Vance wore a gray dress that had been mended at the seams, her dark hair pulled back so tight it made her face look harder than it probably was. She wasn't ugly. Ethan had seen ugly. But she wasn't the kind of woman men wrote songs about either. Sharp nose, sharper eyes, mouth set in a line that said she'd heard every joke and insult the world had to offer and stopped caring somewhere around her 16th birthday. She looked up when he approached, didn't stand, didn't smile. "Mr. Cross." "Miss Vance." "They told you?" "They told me." He sat down across from her, hat still in his hands. Up close, he could see the circles under her eyes, the calluses on her fingers. She'd been working. Hard. "You really want to do this?" "Want has nothing to do with it." Her voice was low, controlled. Eastern accent softened by years out west, but still there in the vowels. "I have $2,300 in debts I can't pay. My father's store is worth maybe $800 if I'm lucky. I'm 26 years old, unmarried, and every man in this town looks at me like I'm a math problem they can't solve." She met his eyes. "So, no, Mr. Cross. I don't want to marry a stranger, but I'm not going to pretend I have better options." At least she was honest. "What do you know about ranching?" he asked. Nothing. What do you know about keeping books? Enough to know mine are a mess. Then we're even. She folded her hands in her lap. They were shaking slightly, but her voice stayed steady. They're offering us both a way out of impossible situations. We take it. We survive another year. Maybe we even figure out how to make it work. Or maybe we don't, and in 12 months we walk away with our debts cleared and our dignity intact. Either way, it's better than what we have now. Ethan studied her. There was something almost frightening about her composure, like she'd already made peace with whatever hell this was going to be. You think dignity survives this kind of arrangement? He asked. I think dignity is a luxury neither of us can afford right now. Fair enough. If we do this, he said slowly, there are terms. I'm sure there are. I run the ranch. My land, my decisions. Something flickered in her eyes. Anger, maybe. Or just recognition of what she was signing up for. And the finances? What about them? Someone needs to manage the money. The real money, not just... She waved a hand, cattle sales and payroll. Someone needs to track expenses, negotiate with suppliers, find out where we're bleeding money. She leaned forward slightly. I can do that. I've been doing it for my father's store since I was 14. Your father's store is failing. My father's store failed because he extended credit to half the town and never collected. Because he ordered inventory he couldn't sell and stored it until it rotted. Because he was a kind man in a business that punishes kindness. Her jaw tightened. I know how to read a ledger, Mr. Cross. I know how to spot when someone's cheating you, and I know how to say no. Can you say the same? He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't know what she was talking about, but the truth was, his books were a mess. He'd been so focused on the land, on the cattle, on just keeping the damn operation moving forward day by day, that he'd let the paperwork pile up. Let suppliers charge whatever they wanted because he didn't have time to argue. Let debts accumulate because facing them felt like admitting defeat. Fine, he said. You handle the books. I handle everything else. And living arrangements? His face heated. Separate rooms. Agreed. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. I wouldn't dream of anything else, Mr. Cross. The way she said it, dry, almost mocking, made him wonder if she was insulting him or herself. Maybe both. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a wagon rattled past. Someone laughed. Normal life continuing on while two desperate people made the worst decision of their lives. Tomorrow, then, Claire said. I assume they want this done quickly. Judge Hendricks can marry us in the morning. Driscoll's office, 9 o'clock. I'll be there. She stood, extended her hand. Ethan rose and shook it. Her grip was firm, her palm rough. A working woman's hand. 1 year, she said. 1 year. She left without looking back. Ethan stood there, hat still in his hands, and wondered what the hell he'd just agreed to. The wedding was as cold as the arrangement that birthed it. Judge Hendricks read the vows in a monotone, like he was sentencing them instead of marrying them. Driscoll and Victor stood as witnesses, both looking pleased with themselves. Clara wore the same gray dress from yesterday. Ethan had brushed the dust off his best shirt and called it good enough. Do you, Ethan James Cross, take this woman? He did. Do you, Clara Margaret Vance, take this man? She did. Then, by the power vested in me, by the territory of... They were married. No kiss, no celebration. Driscoll handed Ethan a folder containing the restructured loan terms. 6 months before the first payment was due, interest reduced to 8%, penalties waived. Victor gave Clara a similar folder for her store debts. The price of their freedom, spelled out in legal language and signed in triplicate. Congratulations, Driscoll said, though his tone suggested condolences would be more appropriate. Victor shook Ethan's hand, his grip just a shade too tight. Make it work, Cross. I'd hate to see you fail after we went to all this trouble. There was something in his eyes, a warning, maybe, or a promise. Ethan couldn't tell which. Clara collected her things from the boarding house where she'd been staying, 2 trunks, a wooden box of her father's papers, and a satchel of clothes. Everything she owned in the world fit in the back of Ethan's wagon. They rode out of town in silence. The road to Iron Ridge Ranch took 4 hours on a good day. Today wasn't a good day. The wagon wheel hit every rut, every rock. The sun beat down like it had a personal grudge. And Clara sat beside him on the bench seat, back straight, hands folded, staring at the horizon like she was heading to her execution. "You should know," Ethan said eventually, because the silence was worse than talking. "The place is rough." "I didn't expect a palace. I mean rough. The main house needs work. The barn's barely standing. We're down to 37 head of cattle, and most of them are too old to sell. The fence line is a joke. The well's running dry." He didn't know why he was telling her all this. Maybe because if she knew how bad it was, she'd understand what she was walking into. "We've got 2 ranch hands left, Moss and Tommy. Good men, but they're not miracle workers. And the land," he gestured at the scrub brush and dust spreading out around them. Once this had been grassland, rich soil, good grazing, but 3 years of drought had turned it into something that looked like the earth had given up. "How much are you paying your hands?" Clara asked. The question surprised him. 40 a month plus room and board. Why? And your suppliers? What about them? What are you paying Hendrickson's feed and supply for hay? Ethan frowned. I don't know, $12, $13 a bale? $13.50, Clara said. She was looking at him now, those sharp eyes calculating. I saw the invoice on Driscoll's desk yesterday. You're paying $13.50 a bale for hay that Peterson's sells for $9. Peterson's is 20 miles in the wrong direction. It's also $4.50 cheaper per bale. If you're feeding 37 head through winter, that's, she did the math in her head, roughly $400 in savings over 4 months. He stared at her. You memorized an invoice you saw for 5 seconds? I memorized 3 invoices. Hendrickson's overcharging you on everything. Grain, salt licks, tack repair. You're probably paying 30% more than you should be. Hendrickson's is where everyone goes. Everyone who doesn't mind getting robbed. Ethan's hands tightened on the reins. Hendrickson extended me credit when no one else would. Hendrickson extended you debt at predatory rates because he knew you were desperate. That's not kindness, Mr. Cross. That's opportunity. The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, so cold, made his teeth ache, but he couldn't argue because she was probably right. They rode in silence for another hour. When Iron Ridge finally came into view, Ethan heard Clara's breath catch, just for a second. Then she went still again, and he knew she was doing what he'd been doing for months, trying to figure out if this place could be saved or if they'd both just signed on to watch it die. The main house was a 2-story structure that had been built with ambition 20 years ago and abandoned to gravity ever since. The porch sagged. Half the shutters hung crooked. The roof had a tarp over one section where shingles had blown off last winter. Paint peeled in long curls, showing gray wood underneath. The barn wasn't better. Worse, actually, because at least the house was still standing square. The barn listed to one side like a drunk leaning on a bar, and the corral fence was held together with wire and prayers. 2 men emerged from the barn as the wagon pulled up. Moss, 50-something, built like a scarecrow, with a face that looked like it had been carved from leather, raised a hand in greeting. Tommy, younger by 20 years but going gray at the temples, just stared at Clara like she was a ghost. "Bosty," Moss said. "Didn't expect you back with company." "This is Clara." Ethan climbed down, offered her a hand. She took it, stepping down carefully. "My wife. We got married this morning." Both men's jaws dropped. "Your wife?" Tommy recovered first. "Since when were you getting married?" "Since this morning, like I said." Ethan grabbed one of Clara's trunks. "Clara, this is Moss and Tommy. They keep this place from falling apart completely." "Ma'am," Moss said, recovering his manners. He pulled off his hat. "Welcome to Iron Ridge." Clara nodded. "Thank you. We'll, Tommy looked at Moss, lost. There's work in the south pasture." "Go," Ethan said. They fled. Clara watched them go, then turned to look at the house. "Which room is mine?" "Right, separate rooms." "Upstairs. Second door on the right. It's clean, mostly. Needs airing out." He carried her trunk toward the house. I'm across the hall. The inside of the house was better than the outside, but not by much. Ethan had never been good at domestic things. The furniture was functional, the floors were swept, but there was a bleakness to the place. No curtains, no rugs, nothing soft or decorative, just walls and floors and the basics needed to survive. Clara's room had a bed, a dresser, and a chair. One window looking out over the dying pasture. Ethan set the trunk down at the foot of the bed. It's not much, he said. It's fine. There's a pump in the kitchen. Outhouse is around back. We eat at 6, breakfast and dinner. Moss does most of the cooking because I burn everything I touch. I can cook. You don't have to. I can cook, she repeated, firmer. I'm not going to sit in this room all day doing nothing. If I'm here, I'm working. He should have expected that. Fine, kitchen's yours, but the books are the priority. I need to know what we're spending, what we owe, where the money's going. I'll need to see all your records, invoices, receipts, contracts, everything. They're in the office, downstairs next to the... It's a mess, he admitted. I haven't organized anything in months. Then that's where I'll start. She moved to the window, looking out. Her reflection showed nothing, no fear, no regret, no emotion at all. Anything else I should know? Stay away from the north pasture. Fence is down and there's a drop. And don't go into town alone until people get used to seeing you around. Why? Because this is a small town and people talk. They're going to have questions about why we got married so fast, and I'd rather not deal with that until we have to. Clara turned from the window. You're ashamed. I'm practical. You're ashamed you had to marry someone like me to save your ranch. The words hung there, sharp and ugly. Ethan wanted to deny it, but his silence was answer enough. I'll stay out of town, Clara said quietly. I wouldn't want to embarrass you. She turned back to the window, dismissing him. Ethan stood there for a moment, feeling like he'd just lost an argument he didn't know he was having. Then he left, closing the door behind him. The office was exactly as bad as he'd warned. Papers everywhere. Invoices, bills, receipts, letters from creditors. Some organized into piles, most just scattered. A desk covered in dust and coffee rings. A filing cabinet with drawers that didn't close properly. Clara stood in the doorway, taking it all in. Then she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By evening, she'd created 3 piles: active, past due, and fraud. The last pile got Ethan's attention when he came in to tell her dinner was ready. Fraud? Clara held up an invoice. Hendrickson's feed and supply. This bill says you bought 40 bales of hay in March, did you? I don't remember, maybe. Tommy's notes say you only took delivery of 32 bales, but you were charged for 40. She set it down, picked up another. Here, grain delivery in April. Charged for 500 pounds, received 380. June, salt licks, charged for 12, got 9. Ethan felt something cold spread through his chest. How much? In the last 6 months? Clara did the math. You've been overbilled by at least $340 that I can prove. Probably more. $340. Almost enough to make a loan payment, almost enough to fix the barn roof. Almost enough to matter. Son of a bitch. He's been doing this to everyone, Clara said. That's my guess. Small amounts spread across multiple transactions, counting on people like you who are too busy trying to survive to check every line item. Can we prove it? These invoices are proof. The question is, do you want to confront him? Ethan looked at the paper in her hand. Hendrickson had been supplying Iron Ridge for 5 years. Had even given Ethan credit when the bank wouldn't. But if he'd been stealing the whole time... Yeah, Ethan said. I want to confront him. Then we'll need to go through everything, every invoice, every delivery receipt, build a case he can't argue with. Clara looked at the chaos around her. It's going to take time. How much time? A week, maybe 2. He nodded. Dinner could wait. They worked through the night, Clara calling out items from invoices while Ethan checked them against delivery receipts he'd stuffed in drawers and forgotten about. The numbers painted a damning picture. Hendrickson had been systematically overcharging, short delivering, and padding bills for years. Not just to Ethan, but based on the pattern. Probably to every rancher within 50 miles who didn't have the time or skill to audit their books. $847, Clara said finally, setting down the last invoice. It was past midnight. That's what he's stolen from you in the last 18 months alone. Probably more before that, but your older records are incomplete. $847. Enough to pay 3 months' wages for Moss and Tommy. Enough to buy breeding stock. Enough to matter in ways that made Ethan's hands shake with rage. We go tomorrow, he said. He'll deny it. Let him try. Clara looked at him across the desk, and for the first time since they'd met, something like approval crossed her face. Don't go alone. Bring Tommy and Moss. Men like Hendrickson respond better to witnesses. You're not coming? I'm the wife who's been here 3 days and already causing trouble. You're the rancher who's been his customer for 5 years. Your word carries more weight. She stood gathering the papers into a folder. But take this. Every invoice, every receipt organized by date. If he wants to argue math, let him argue with his own paperwork. Ethan took the folder. Their fingers brushed, just for a second, and he was surprised by how warm her hand was. She pulled back quickly. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. We don't know if this will work. But it was something. For the first time in months, they had something that felt like a weapon instead of just another weight dragging them down. Hendrickson's feed and supply sat on Main Street like a fat tick, bloated from years of feeding off desperate ranchers. The building was too big, too new, too well-maintained compared to everything around it. Arnold Hendrickson himself stood behind the counter, 50 pounds overweight, mustache waxed to points, wearing a vest that cost more than most men made in a month. He smiled when Ethan walked in. The smile died when he saw Moss and Tommy flanking him. Cross. Gentlemen? Hendrickson's voice had that false heartiness men use when they're nervous. What can I do for you? Ethan dropped the folder on the counter. You can explain this. Explain what? 40 bales charged, 32 delivered. 500 pounds charged, 380 delivered. Ethan flipped open the folder, spreading invoices across the counter. You've been robbing me, Arnold. For years. The color drained from Hendrickson's face, then rushed back red. Now you wait just a... $847. Ethan's voice was quiet, dangerous. That's what you've stolen, documented, proven, and I'm guessing I'm not the only one. You can't prove every invoice, every receipt. My wife went through them all. Ethan leaned forward. You want to argue numbers with Clara? Be my guest. She'll bury you. Hendrickson's mouth opened and closed. Behind him, his clerk, a nervous kid named Sam, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. There must be some mistake, Hendrickson tried. Clerical errors, maybe. Clerical errors don't add up to $847 in 18 months. That's not mistakes, Arnold. That's theft. You're calling me a thief? Hendrickson's voice rose. I gave you credit when no one else would. I kept you afloat. You bled me dry while pretending to help. That's worse than honest thievery. People were gathering now. The argument had drawn attention, other customers, folks from the street. Ethan could see them watching through the window. Good. Let them watch. I want my money back, Ethan said. Every dollar. And I want an apology. You'll get nothing. This is slander. I'll sue you for... With what evidence? Moss stepped forward, pulling out his own set of receipts. Because I got deliveries too, Arnold, and now that Cross mentioned it, I'm thinking my numbers don't add up either. Tommy nodded. Same here. Hendrickson looked trapped. His eyes darted around the store, looking for escape, for support. But his clerk wouldn't meet his gaze, and the gathering crowd was muttering amongst themselves. I'll need to check my records, Hendrickson said finally. You do that. And while you're checking, I'm telling everyone I know to verify their deliveries before they pay you another cent. Ethan gathered up the invoices. You've got 1 week, Arnold. 1 week to make this right, or I'm taking this to Judge Hendricks and the town council. Let them decide if you're a thief or just incompetent. He turned and walked out, Moss and Tommy behind him. The crowd parted. Outside, Ethan realized his hands were shaking, not from fear, from anger, yes, but also from something else, something that felt almost like hope. Boss? Tommy asked. Head back to the ranch. I need to... What did he need? To breathe, to think, to process the fact that for the first time in a year, He'd stood up to someone instead of just taking the hits. He needed to tell Clara. She was in the garden when he got back, a patch of dirt behind the house that Ethan had given up on last summer. She'd cleared the weeds and was turning soil with a spade, her gray dress already dusty, hair escaping its pins. "How did it go?" she asked without looking up. "He folded, sort of. I gave him a week to make it right." "He won't." "Probably not. But the whole town knows now. If he doesn't pay, he'll lose every customer he has." Clara nodded, still digging. "Then we wait." Ethan watched her work. She moved efficiently, no wasted motion, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. "You don't have to do that." "The garden? I know. But if we're going to be here a year, we might as well eat something besides beans and salt pork. This soil's not terrible. I can get lettuce and carrots in before first frost." She finally looked at him. "Unless you object." "No, He didn't know what he just... "Thank you. For the invoices. You didn't have to spend all night on that." "Yes, I did. That's what I'm here for." She went back to digging. "That's our arrangement." "Right. The arrangement. The business deal." He kept forgetting. "I'm going to check the south fence," he said. "Moss said something broke overnight." "I'll have dinner ready at 6. He left her there, digging in the dust, and tried not to think about how strange it was to have someone else in his space. Someone who'd upended 3 days' worth of his life in 72 hours and somehow made it feel less empty instead of more crowded. The fence was a disaster, 3 posts down, wire tangled. Coyote had probably gone through it, or maybe just wind. Ethan spent 4 hours in the sun resetting posts and restringing wire, and by the time he got back, his shoulders screamed and his hands were bleeding from 6 wire cuts. Clara took one look at him and pointed at the kitchen pump. "Wash. Then sit." He started to argue, but the look on her face stopped him. He washed. He sat. She brought bandages and wrapped his hands with quick, competent movements. No sympathy, no coddling, just efficient first aid. "You'll want to soak these tonight," she said. "Keep them clean or they'll infect." "I've had worse." "I'm sure you have. Soak them anyway." Dinner was venison stew. She'd convinced Tommy to hunt yesterday, with bread she'd somehow made despite the ancient stove. It was the best meal Ethan had eaten in 6 months. "Where'd you learn to cook?" he asked. "My mother, before she died." Then necessity. Clara ate mechanically, like it was fuel instead of pleasure. "When it was just my father and me, someone had to make sure we didn't starve." "How old were you when she passed?" 10. 10 years old and running a household. No wonder she moved like someone twice her age. She'd been surviving on her own since childhood. "I'm sorry," Ethan said. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." They ate in silence after that. When they finished, Clara cleared the plates and Ethan went to his room, hands throbbing, mind racing. Tomorrow, he'd check the northern pasture, fix the barn door, see if Hendrickson sent word. Keep moving, keep working, keep pretending this strange new reality was something he could control. But that night, lying in bed with his hands soaking in salt water, Ethan heard Clara moving around in the room across the hall. Quiet footsteps, the scrape of a chair, the rustle of papers. Still working. He wondered if she ever stopped, if she ever let herself rest, or if survival had carved that luxury out of her the same way it had for him. 1 year, they'd said. 1 year of this arrangement. It had been 4 days, and already Ethan couldn't remember what the silence used to sound like. Hendrickson didn't send word. He sent his lawyer instead. The man showed up on day 6, dressed in a black suit that looked like it cost more than Iron Ridge made in a season. He handed Ethan a letter threatening legal action for defamation, slander, and interference with legitimate business operations. Clara read it once, then set it on fire in the kitchen stove. "He's scared," she said, watching the paper curl and blacken. "Men don't threaten lawsuits unless they know they're guilty, or unless they have the money to bury us in legal fees. He's not going to sue. He's hoping you'll back down." She turned from the stove. "Are you going to back down?" Ethan thought about those invoices. About $847 stolen while he'd been too tired, too desperate, too proud to check the numbers. About how many other ranchers were being bled the same way. "No." "Good. Then tomorrow we go to the town council. Tomorrow turned out to be complicated. Judge Hendricks, who served as both magistrate and council head, listened to Ethan's presentation with the enthusiasm of a man watching paint dry. The 5 council members showed varying degrees of interest, ranging from bored to hostile. 2 of them, Ethan recognized as regular customers at Hendrickson's store. Clara sat in the back of the room, hands folded, watching everything. "These are serious accusations, Mr. Cross," Judge Hendricks said when Ethan finished. He was 70 if he was a day, with a voice like gravel and the political instincts of a survivor. "Arnold Hendrickson has been a pillar of this community for 15 years. A pillar who's been robbing that community for at least half that time. You have proof of intent to defraud? I have proof of fraud. The intent's self-evident. Self-evident to you, perhaps." Hendricks shuffled through the invoices without really looking at them. But mistakes happen. Clerical errors. Poor record-keeping on both sides. $847 isn't clerical error. That's systematic theft. Councilman Morris, fat, red-faced, owner of the general store that competed with what was left of Clara's father's place, leaned forward. "Or systematic incompetence on your part, Cross. Maybe you just don't remember what you ordered." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "I remember fine, and I have the delivery receipts to prove—" "Receipts you could have altered. Why would I—" "Gentlemen." That was Clara. She stood up in the back and every head turned. "May I speak?" Hendricks frowned. "Mrs. Cross, this is a formal proceeding, which concerns fraudulent business practices that affect multiple ranchers in this region. I believe that makes it relevant to everyone in this room." She walked forward, each step measured. "You want proof of intent? Here's proof. In March, Mr. Hendrickson billed Iron Ridge for 40 bales of hay at $13.50 per bale. The delivery receipt shows 32 bales received. That's an overbilling of $108. The same month, he billed Moss Turner for grain delivery, 500 pounds charged, actual delivery 380. The same month, he billed Thomas Chen for 15 salt licks, delivered 11. Exact same pattern. Same percentages. She set 3 new folders on the council table. Ethan hadn't known she'd pulled records for Moss and Tommy, too. 3 customers, 3 separate transactions, identical percentage discrepancies. That's not clerical error, gentlemen. That's a system. Clara's voice never rose, never wavered. And if you check the records of every rancher who does business with Hendrickson's Feed and Supply, I'm willing to bet you'll find the same pattern repeated dozens of times. Small amounts, spread across multiple transactions, counting on customers who are too busy surviving to audit their books. The room had gone very quiet. Morris cleared his throat. "These are allegations based on math," Clara cut him off. "Numbers don't lie, Councilman. Men do. And before you suggest that these invoices were altered, I should mention that I pulled copies from the county clerk's office this morning. Public records. Would you like to compare them?" She was bluffing. Ethan could tell by the way her left hand had curled into a fist behind her back. But Morris didn't know that, and the look on his face said he was reconsidering his position. Hendricks tapped the folders. "I'll need to review these. Consult with Mr. Hendrickson. Get his side of the story." "Of course." Clara's smile didn't reach her eyes. "But while you're reviewing, you might want to consider who else in this room does business with Hendricksons. Because if this pattern holds, it means he's been stealing from half the territory. And when word gets out, and it will get out, those customers are going to want answers. Better they hear it from you than from gossip." Threat delivered. Message received. The council meeting ended with a promise to investigate. Ethan and Clara walked out into afternoon sun that felt too bright, too normal for what had just happened. "You pulled records from the clerk's office?" Ethan asked once they were out of earshot. "No, I looked at the filing system and made an educated guess about what would be there." Clara's hand was still shaking slightly. "But Morris doesn't know that. You lied to the town council. I made a strategic statement based on probable evidence." She glanced at him. "Are you angry?" He should be. But looking at her, this woman who'd been in his life barely 2 weeks and had already turned it upside down, Ethan mostly just felt something like awe. No, he said. I'm impressed. Don't be impressed yet. We still don't know if it'll work. It worked. 3 days later, Judge Hendricks sent word that Arnold Hendrickson had agreed to a settlement. $847 returned to Iron Ridge Ranch, plus an additional $200 in administrative adjustments. Similar settlements would be offered to Moss and Tommy. In exchange, no formal charges would be filed. He's buying silence, Clara said when Ethan told her. He's paying back what he stole. He's paying back what he got caught stealing. There's a difference. She was at the kitchen table working through a new stack of invoices from other suppliers. But we'll take it. We need the money more than we need revenge. The check arrived the next morning, $1,047. More money than Ethan had seen in one place since he'd bought Iron Ridge. He stared at it for a full minute before Clara took it from his hand. I'll deposit this tomorrow. In the meantime, she pulled out a ledger. We need to talk about restructuring. Restructuring what? Everything. She flipped the book open. We have 6 months before our first loan payment is due. That's $820 plus interest. We can make that now, but barely. After that, we'll be back to broke unless we change how this place operates. Ethan sat down across from her. What do you mean, change how it operates? I mean, we're hemorrhaging money on things we don't need and ignoring things we do. You're paying $40 a month for 2 ranch hands when you can't afford it. You're buying feed at inflated prices because it's convenient. You're trying to run cattle on land that can't support them. She met his eyes. This ranch is dying because you're running it like it's still 1870. It's not. It's 1893, and the rules have changed. Pride flared hot in his chest. I've kept this place alive for 3 years. Barely. You've kept it barely alive by sacrificing everything else. Your health, your savings, your future. Claire's voice stayed level. And now you've sacrificed your freedom by marrying me. So either we change how things work, or all of that was for nothing. She wasn't wrong. He hated that she wasn't wrong. What do you want to do? He asked finally. First, we cut costs, way down. Moss and Tommy. We keep Moss, let Tommy go. Tommy's been here 2 years. Tommy's a good worker, but we can't afford good workers right now. We need essential workers. Moss can do the work of 2 men if we're smart about what we ask him to do. And what's Tommy supposed to do? Find work somewhere that can pay him. That's not our problem. Clara tapped the ledger. Second, we stop buying from Hendrickson's entirely. Peterson's is cheaper, and they'll extend credit if we ask. Third, we sell off half the herd. What? We have 37 head of cattle on land that can support maybe 20. They're starving, which means they're not gaining weight, which means we're losing money every day we keep them. Sell 17 head now while they're still worth something. Use that money to properly feed and care for the remaining 20. Come spring, those 20 will be worth more than the 37 are today. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she didn't understand ranching, didn't understand how things worked out here. But the numbers in her ledger were damning. They were spending more to feed 37 cattle than they'd make selling them. It was basic math, and he'd been too stubborn to see it. What else? His voice came out rough. We diversify. You can't rely on cattle alone, not with these drought conditions. We need crops. Hay, at minimum, so we're not buying it from suppliers. Maybe wheat or corn if we can get irrigation working. I know you said the irrigation project failed, but the well's running dry. Then we dig a new well, or we bring water from the creek. The creek's a mile away. Then we spend money on pipe instead of feed we can't afford. Clara leaned back. Look, I'm not saying any of this is easy. I'm saying it's necessary. We can keep doing things the way you've been doing them and lose everything in 6 months. Or we can try something different and maybe survive long enough to see if this place can actually work. Ethan looked at her across the table. This woman who'd appeared in his life like a curse disguised as a solution, and realized she was the first person in 3 years who told him the truth without trying to soften it. All right, he said. We try it your way. Something flickered across Clara's face. Not quite a smile. Relief, maybe. I'll draw up a plan, she said. We'll start with the herd reduction. Moss will know which cattle to sell. She was right. Moss took one look at the herd and pointed out 17 head that were either too old, too sick, or too much trouble to justify keeping. They drove them to auction in Silver Creek the following week and came back with $340. Not great money, but money they desperately needed. Clara put $200 toward supplies, $100 into savings, and $40 toward hiring a man to survey for a new well site. "We're spending money to maybe find water?" Ethan asked. "We're investing in infrastructure. There's a difference." The surveyor showed up 3 days later, walked the property for 6 hours, and declared there was good water under the northeast section if they were willing to dig deep. "How deep?" Ethan asked. 80 feet, maybe 90. "That's almost—" "I know what it is," Clara interrupted. She was looking at the surveyor's map, calculating. "What's it cost?" "Labor and materials? 300, maybe 350 if you hit rock." They didn't have 300. They barely had 200 after paying the surveyor's fee. Clara thanked the man, sent him off, and turned to Ethan. "We need a loan." "We just restructured our loans. No one's going to, yeah, not from a bank. From someone local. Someone who wants to see this place succeed." She was quiet for a moment. "What about Moss? He's been here long enough. Does he have savings?" "I'm not asking my ranch hand for a loan." "Why not? If we explain the situation, show him the numbers, make it clear he'll get paid back with interest." "Because it's humiliating. Survival usually is." Ethan wanted to hit something, but Clara's face showed no sympathy, no apology, just that same infuriating logic that kept proving her right. Moss, when asked, didn't hesitate. "I got 200 put away," he said. "Been saving for a place of my own, but that's years off yet. You need it now. You can have it. 10% interest, paid back within a year." 10% steep, Clara said. "Steep's fair when the risk's high." Moss looked at Ethan. "No offense, boss, but this place is one bad season away from going under. You're asking me to bet my future on yours. That's worth 10%. "Deal," Clara said before Ethan could respond. She shook Moss's hand. "We'll have a contract drawn up." With Moss's 200 and their remaining savings, they had enough to dig the well. Barely. The crew started work in early September, and for 2 weeks the ranch was consumed by the sound of picks hitting rock and men cursing the hard-panned soil. They hit water at 78 feet. Ethan stood at the edge of the hole, watching muddy water seep up through broken rock, and felt something in his chest unclench for the first time in months. "It's not much flow yet," the foreman said. "Need to let it settle. Then we'll see what you've got. But there's water down there, good water." Clara appeared beside him, wiping dust off her hands. She'd been helping haul rocks all morning despite his protests. "How much can it produce?" "Won't know for a few days, but if I had to guess, enough for your herd and then some. Maybe even enough for irrigation if you're smart about it." She nodded, satisfied. Didn't smile, didn't celebrate. Just nodded like this was exactly what she'd expected to happen. Ethan wanted to shake her, wanted to make her show something, excitement, relief, anything human. But she just turned and walked back to the house, already moving on to the next problem. The well changed things. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in small ways that added up. The remaining cattle started gaining weight. They could afford to plant winter wheat. The tension that had been wrapped around Ethan's shoulders for 3 years loosened just enough to let him sleep more than 4 hours a night. And Clara kept working. She renegotiated their contract with Peterson's, getting them better rates on feed and a payment plan that didn't destroy their cash flow. She found a buyer for the wool from the 3 sheep Ethan had forgotten he owned, $30 they didn't know they had. She discovered that the county paid bounties on wolf pelts and convinced Moss to start trapping. Every dollar went into the ledger. Every expense got questioned. Every decision got analyzed until Ethan wanted to scream. "We can't afford it," became her favorite phrase. "It's $20, which is $20 we don't have. We can't afford it. The barn door is falling off. Then we fix it ourselves. We can't afford a carpenter. Clara, we have to spend money to eat this. We have to spend money we have, not money we hope to have, not money we might have if things go well. Money we actually possess right now." She slammed the ledger shut. "That's how you survive. That's how you stop drowning. You spend what you have and not 1 cent more. That's not living, that's just existing. Right now, existing is enough." They fought about money, about priorities, about whether they should invest in chickens or save for spring planting, about whether new boots for Moss was essential or optional. about everything and nothing until Ethan couldn't remember what it had been like before she'd arrived with her sharp tongue and sharper mind. But the ranch stabilized. October came, and with it the first payment on their restructured loan, $820 plus interest. Clara counted it out twice, put it in an envelope, and rode into town with Ethan to deliver it personally. Driscoll looked genuinely surprised to see them. Mr. Cross. Mrs. Cross. He took the envelope, counted the money. This is unexpected. We pay our debts, Clara said. So I see. Driscoll made a note in his ledger. Your next payment is due in March, another $820 plus accumulated interest. We'll be here. They walked out into cold autumn air, and Ethan realized something had shifted. They'd made a payment, an actual, on-time payment. For the first time since he'd bought this place, he wasn't behind on something. We did it, he said. We made one payment. Clara pulled her coat tighter against the wind. Don't celebrate yet. But there was something in her voice, something that wasn't quite satisfaction, but close enough to matter. They stopped at the general store for supplies, salt, coffee, flour. Morris was behind the counter, and his smile was faker than usual. Mrs. Cross, Mr. Cross, heard you made your loan payment. Word travels fast. It's a small town. Morris wrapped their flour in brown paper. Also heard you're buying from Peterson's now. Their prices are better. Their prices are 20 miles away. That's a long ride for feed. Shorter than riding into bankruptcy. Morris's smile tightened. Suit yourself. Just saying loyalty used to mean something in this town. Clara leaned on the counter. Loyalty means paying a fair price for honest goods, Mr. Morris. The moment someone charges me more than something's worth, loyalty ends. That's a cold way to do business. That's the only way to stay in business. They left Morris sputtering behind his counter. Outside, Ethan started laughing. He couldn't help it. The look on Morris's face had been worth the whole uncomfortable exchange. What's funny? Clara asked. You, terrifying Morris like that. I didn't terrify him. I stated facts. You definitely terrified him. Ethan loaded the supplies into the wagon. Half the town's scared of you, you know. Good. Good? People don't cheat people they're scared of. Clara climbed up onto the wagon seat. They might not like me, but they'll think twice before trying to rob us. She was right. Again. Ethan was starting to realize she was right about most things, which was both reassuring and deeply annoying. They rode back to the ranch in comfortable silence. The sun was setting, painting the scrub brush gold and red. The land looked less dead than it had in August. The well had brought green back to the northeast pasture, and the winter wheat was starting to show in neat rows where they'd planted. Not beautiful, not yet, but alive. Clara? Thank you. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quiet. You don't need to thank me. This is what I'm here for. Still, you've done more in 3 months than I managed in 3 years. You kept it alive. I'm just helping it grow. She glanced at him. That's different. It didn't feel different. It felt like she'd taken something broken and made it work through sheer force of will and refusal to accept failure. They reached Iron Ridge as the last light died. Moss had dinner ready. Venison stew again. He wasn't creative, but he was consistent. They ate together at the kitchen table, talking about the well, about the wheat, about whether they could afford to buy 3 more cattle come spring. Normal conversation, domestic conversation, the kind of thing married people probably did every night, except they weren't really married, not in any way that mattered. Later, lying in his room, Ethan heard Clara moving around across the hall again. Still working. Always working. He wondered if she ever let herself rest or if the fear of failure kept her moving the way it used to keep him moving. He wondered if she was happy here. He wondered if he was. The thought surprised him. Happiness hadn't been part of the calculation. Survival had been the goal, and everything else was luxury. But somewhere in the last 3 months, the ranch had stopped feeling like a burden he was dragging uphill and started feeling like something that might actually work. And Clara was a large part of why. Not that he'd tell her that. She'd probably just add it to her ledger and calculate the cost. November arrived with the first real cold. Frost killed the last of the garden. But Clara had already harvested everything worth saving. They had carrots and potatoes stored in the cellar, dried beans hanging in the pantry, enough food to get through winter without spending money they didn't have. Then Victor Hale came back. Ethan saw him riding up the drive and felt his stomach drop. Nothing good ever followed Victor Hale. "Mr. Cross?" Victor dismounted, all smiles and expensive clothes. "Mrs. Cross, beautiful day, isn't it? What do you want, Victor?" "Want? I don't want anything. I'm here to check on your progress." He looked around the ranch, the repaired barn, the new well, the cattle putting on healthy weight. "You've been busy." "We've been surviving." "More than surviving, I'd say. Made your first loan payment, I hear. Renegotiated with several suppliers. Quite impressive for 3 months' work." Clara appeared in the doorway. She didn't say anything, just stood there watching. Victor noticed her. "Mrs. Cross, I must say you've made quite an impact. Arnold Hendrickson is still complaining about you to anyone who will listen." "Good." "Good indeed." Victor's smile sharpened. "Though I wonder if you've considered the long-term implications of making enemies in a small town." "We didn't make enemies," Ethan said. "We called out a thief." "Semantics. The point is you've disrupted certain arrangements that have been in place for a long time. People don't like disruption, Mr. Cross. It makes them nervous. People can be nervous all they want. We're not breaking any laws." "Oh, I know you're not. In fact, you're doing everything exactly right. That's what worries me." Victor pulled an envelope from his coat. "Which is why I'm here to discuss the terms of your arrangement." Ethan's blood went cold. "What about them?" "Simple review, making sure you understand the conditions. You have 6 months left on your grace period, after which payments resume at the agreed schedule. $820 every 3 months for the next 5 years. He handed Ethan the envelope. "Just a reminder. I like to stay on top of these things." Clara walked forward. "Is there something else, Mr. Hale? Because it seems like you rode a long way just to remind us of terms we already know." Victor's eyes fixed on her. "Perceptive. I like that." He paused. "Here's the truth, Mrs. Cross. I want to see you succeed. I genuinely do. But I also want to make sure you understand the stakes. This ranch, your combined debts, the legal structure of your marriage, it's all very interconnected. If one piece fails, everything fails. And there are people in this territory who would be very happy to see that happen. People like you. People like Arnold Hendrickson. People like Martin Driscoll. People who don't appreciate having their business practices questioned by newcomers." Victor smiled. "I'm not your enemy. I'm just making sure you know who is." He mounted his horse, tipped his hat. "Keep up the good work. I'll check in again come spring." He rode away, leaving Ethan and Clara standing in the cold. "What was that?" Ethan asked. Clara was staring at the dust trail Victor left behind. A warning. About what? About everything. She turned back to the house. "He didn't ride out here just to remind us about payment terms. He came to let us know we're being watched." "Why?" "Because we're succeeding. Because we exposed fraud. Because we're not failing the way we were supposed to." Clara's jaw tightened. "And because men like Victor Hale don't like it when their plans don't work out the way they expected." Ethan looked at the envelope Victor had given him. Inside was a copy of their loan agreement with certain sections highlighted. Payment terms, default clauses, and one section marked in red ink that made his chest tighten. "Clara?" "What?" "Section 12, the marriage requirement." She took the paper, read it. Her face went very still. "In the event of marital dissolution before the loan term expires," she read aloud, "all debt becomes immediately due in full." "What does that mean?" "It means if we get divorced before the 5 years are up, they can demand we pay everything immediately. The entire remaining balance. Not in installments. Not over time. All at once." They stared at each other. "That wasn't in the original terms," Ethan said. "Are you sure?" He wasn't sure. He'd been so desperate that day in Driscoll's office, he'd signed everything they put in front of him. "I don't know." "Then we need to check. If this clause was added after we signed, it's fraud. If it was there from the beginning," Clara's voice trailed off. "Then we're trapped for 5 years instead of 1. 5 years. Not 1 year and done." 5 years of this arrangement, this business marriage, this woman in his house and his life. 5 years or financial ruin. Clara must have seen something in his face because her expression hardened. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like I'm a prison sentence. She thrust the paper back at him. You think I want to be stuck here for 5 years? You think this is my dream life? I never said, you didn't have to. I can see it. Every time you look at me, I can see you calculating whether this was worth it. Her voice shook. Well, I'm calculating too, Ethan. And right now, I'm wondering if saving this ranch was worth being treated like an obligation instead of a person. She walked away before he could respond, slammed into the house. Ethan stood there holding the paper, feeling like he'd just lost an argument he didn't know how to win. Moss appeared from the barn. Everything all right, boss? No. Ethan looked at the house, at the closed door. No, I don't think it is. Want to talk about it? Not really. Moss nodded. Well, when you do want to talk, I'll be in the barn. But for what it's worth, he gestured at the ranch. Whatever's going on between you two, it's working. This place is better than it's been in years. Don't lose sight of that. He walked away, leaving Ethan alone in the yard with a piece of paper that had just turned 1 year into 5, and a wife who hated him for reasons he was only starting to understand. Inside, he could hear Clara moving around, angry footsteps, the slam of a pot. She was cooking dinner because that's what she did. Cooked, cleaned, managed, worked. Never stopped, never rested, never let herself be anything except useful. And he'd just made her feel like even that wasn't enough. Ethan folded the paper and put it in his pocket. Tomorrow he'd ride into town, check the original loan documents, figure out if Victor had just trapped them or if they'd trapped themselves 3 months ago in Driscoll's office. Tonight, he needed to apologize to his wife. If she'd even talked to him. Clara didn't come down for dinner. Ethan ate alone at the kitchen table, the food tasting like ash, listening to the silence upstairs. Moss had already eaten and gone back to the barn. The house felt empty in a way it hadn't since Clara arrived, and Ethan realized with uncomfortable clarity that he'd gotten used to her presence. The sound of her moving through rooms, the scratch of her pen on paper, even her sharp comments about money had become something he relied on. He washed his plate, dried it, put it away, climbed the stairs, stood outside her door. Clara. No answer. I need to talk to you. I'm not interested in talking. Her voice was muffled, distant. He tried the handle, locked. Clara, please. I'm sorry. Silence. Then footsteps. The lock clicked and the door opened 6 inches. She looked at him through the gap, face composed but eyes red-rimmed. Sorry for what, exactly? She asked. For making you feel like... He stopped. Started over. For treating you like a transaction instead of a person. That's what I am, though. That's what we both are. 2 desperate people who made a deal. She started to close the door. Wait. Ethan put his hand on the wood. You're right, that's how this started. But it's been 4 months, and you've done more for this place than I could have done in 4 years. You've saved it. Saved me, and I've been so focused on survival that I forgot to see you as anything except another tool to use. Claire's expression didn't change. Is there a point to this apology, or are you just working through your guilt? The point is you deserve better than how I've been treating you. And if we're stuck together for 5 years instead of 1, then I need to do better. 5 years. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You checked the original contract? Not yet. I'm going into town tomorrow. Don't bother. I already know what you'll find. She pushed the door open wider, revealing her room. Papers covered every surface. The bed, the dresser, the floor. I pulled my copy of the marriage agreement tonight. Read the fine print I was too desperate to notice 4 months ago. Section 12 was there from the beginning. We both signed it. Ethan felt something cold settle in his gut. So we're trapped. We're bound. There's a difference. Clara walked back into the room, picking up one of the papers. 5 years, or we pay everything immediately. That's roughly $18,000 at this point. We don't have $18,000. We don't have $1,800. So what do? We keep doing what we've been doing. We survive. We make payments. We rebuild this ranch until it's worth something again. She looked at him. And we stop pretending this is anything except what it is. A business arrangement that happens to require we stay legally married for 5 years. The word should have been a relief, should have clarified things, set boundaries, made the situation simpler. Instead, they felt like a door closing. Is that what you want? Ethan asked. What I want doesn't matter. It never has. It matters to me. Clara stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Why? Why would what I want possibly matter to you? Because you're my wife. I'm your business partner who happens to share a legal document. Clara, don't. Her voice cracked slightly. Don't pretend this is something it's not. Don't make it harder than it already is. She was right. Again. Making it more complicated wouldn't help either of them. But standing there, looking at her surrounded by papers and problems she'd taken on herself, Ethan felt something shift in his chest, something he didn't have a name for and wasn't sure he wanted to examine. All right, he said quietly. Business arrangement. 5 years. We can do that. We don't have a choice. No, I guess we don't. He left her there, returned to his own room, and lay awake most of the night thinking about contracts and choices, and the woman across the hall who'd become more essential to his life than he'd ever intended. Morning came cold and gray. Ethan went through the motions, fed the cattle, checked the fence line, avoided Clara. She avoided him right back, staying in the office or the kitchen, speaking only when necessary. Moss noticed. You two fighting? No. Could have fooled me. She's been slamming pots all morning and you look like someone died. We're fine. Sure you are. Moss spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Just remember, boss, whatever's going on between you two, don't let it poison what you've built. I've seen partnerships fall apart over less. It's not a partnership, it's a... Ethan stopped. What was it? A marriage that wasn't really a marriage. A business deal with romantic paperwork. A trap neither of them had seen coming. It's complicated, he finished. Marriage usually is. Ethan went to check the north pasture, needing space to think. The fence was holding. The grass was coming back slowly, still thin but better than the bare dirt they'd had in August. 20 cattle grazed peacefully, healthy weight on them for the first time in years. Clara had done this. Her ruthless cutting of expenses, her negotiations, her refusal to accept failure. Without her, he'd be standing here looking at foreclosure notices instead of healthy cattle. 5 years felt simultaneously like forever, and not nearly long enough. He returned to the house around noon to find Clara in the yard talking to a stranger. The man was young, maybe 30, dressed like a merchant, with a wagon full of goods behind him. Can offer you fair prices, the man was saying. Better than what you're getting from Peterson's, I'd wager. I doubt that. Clara's arms were crossed. Peterson's gives us feed at $8.50 a bale and credit terms we can manage. What are you offering? $8 a bale, cash on delivery. No credit, but better prices. How much better on everything else? The merchant rattled off numbers. Clara listened without expression, then shook her head. Your prices are marginally better, but only if we pay cash. We don't have cash to spare. Peterson's credit terms are worth more to us than saving 50 cents a bale. She started to turn away. Wait. The merchant looked frustrated. What if I offered $7.50 a bale? Still no. Credit matters more than cost right now. Everyone needs to save money. Everyone needs to survive, Clara interrupted. Saving $1 today doesn't help if it means I can't buy anything next month. Cash flow beats cheap prices every time. The merchant tried a few more angles, but Clara shut him down each time. Eventually, he gave up and drove away, looking annoyed. Ethan walked over. You just turned down cheaper feed. I turned down a bad deal. Clara watched the wagon disappear. He was trying to undercut Peterson's to steal business. Once he gets enough customers, his prices will go back up. Meanwhile, we'd have burned our relationship with Peterson's for nothing. How do you know that's what he was doing? Because that's what I'd do if I wanted to break into a market. Offer unsustainable prices until the competition leaves, then raise them once you're the only option. She looked at him. You think I'm wrong? No. I think you're frighteningly good at this. Something like a smile crossed her face, there and gone in a second. Someone has to be. They stood there awkwardly, the fight from last night hanging between them unresolved. Clara. "I'm making stew for dinner," she said, cutting him off. "We have extra venison, and the potatoes need using before they rot. Will you and Moss be eating here or in the barn?" Back to business. Safe territory. "Here," Ethan said. "We'll eat here." She nodded and went inside. Ethan stayed in the yard feeling like he'd just lost something he couldn't name. The next week passed in tense civility. They worked, they ate, they existed in the same space without really connecting. Clara managed the books and negotiated with suppliers. Ethan handled the ranch work and tried not to think about the 5-year sentence they were both serving. Then December arrived, and with it, a letter from Victor Hale. Ethan found it tucked into the doorframe when he came in from morning chores. Official-looking envelope, expensive paper. He opened it, standing in the kitchen while Clara made coffee. "What is it?" she asked without turning around. "Victor wants to meet. Says he has a business proposition." "When?" "Tomorrow. 2 o'clock at the Silver Creek Hotel." Clara turned, coffee pot in hand. "Don't go." "What?" "Don't go. Nothing good comes from Victor Hale's business propositions. Maybe it's legitimate. It's never legitimate with men like him." She set the pot down hard. "He shows up here last month with veiled threats, and now he wants a private meeting? That's not business, Ethan. That's a setup." "You don't know that." "I know enough." Clara pulled out a chair, sat down. "Let me ask you something. Why would Victor Hale, who helped arrange our marriage specifically to keep this ranch afloat long enough for the bank to collect payments, suddenly want to help us with another business deal?" Ethan had no answer for that. "He wouldn't," Clara continued, "unless the deal benefits him more than us, unless he's found another way to make money off our desperation." "So what do I do? Ignore it?" "Yes. That's not how business works, Clara. You don't ignore potential opportunities. This isn't an opportunity. It's a trap." She stood up, frustrated. "Fine, go to the meeting, but I'm coming with you." "You don't need to." "I absolutely do, because you're too trusting, and I'm not. And together, maybe we can avoid getting destroyed." She was right. He hated that she was right, but she was. They rode into Silver Creek the next afternoon, the cold biting through their coats. The hotel was the nicest building in town, 2 stories, actual glass in the windows, a lobby that didn't smell like horses. Victor was waiting in a private dining room, lunch spread out on the table like this was a social call. "Mr. Cross, Mrs. Cross, please sit." Victor gestured to the chairs. "I hope the ride wasn't too difficult." "What do you want, Victor?" Ethan didn't sit. "Direct." "I appreciate that." Victor poured wine into 3 glasses. "I want to discuss the future of Iron Ridge Ranch." "We're not selling." "I'm not asking you to sell. I'm asking you to expand." That got Ethan's attention. "Expand how?" "Additional land. There's a parcel adjacent to your northern property line, 200 acres, good grazing, seasonal creek. The owner died last month, no heirs. It's going to auction in January." Victor sipped his wine. "I can help you acquire it." "With what money?" Claire asked. "We barely make our loan payments as it is." "With my money. I'll front the purchase price, you pay me back over time, 10 years, reasonable interest." "How reasonable?" 12%. Clara laughed. Actually laughed. 12% is robbery. 12% is the going rate for unsecured loans to high-risk borrowers. We're not high-risk anymore. We've made every payment on time. You've made 2 payments. That's not exactly a proven track record. Ethan held up a hand. "Why would you do this? What do you get out of it?" Victor set down his glass. "Honestly, I get a stable investment. I've watched what you two have done with Iron Ridge these last 4 months. You've turned a failing operation into something functional. If I loan you money to expand, you'll pay me back because you always pay your debts. That's good business." "Or," Clara said, "you're trying to load us with more debt while prices are low, knowing that when the market shifts, we'll be overextended and unable to pay. Then you foreclose, take the land, and sell it for triple what you paid." Victor looked at her with something like respect. "You have a deeply suspicious mind, Mrs. Cross." "I have a functional mind, which means I can spot a scheme when someone lays it out in front of me. It's not a scheme, it's an opportunity." "Then why come to us? Why not buy the land yourself? Because I don't want to run a ranch. I want to invest in people who can. Victor leaned forward. Look, I understand your hesitation, but the truth is that land is valuable. If you don't buy it, someone else will, and then you'll be stuck with your current acreage while your neighbor expands. Is that what you want? Ethan looked at Clara. She was staring at Victor with barely concealed hostility. We'll think about it, Ethan said. The auction is January 15th. You don't have much time to think. Then we'll think fast. They left without touching the food. Outside, Clara was practically vibrating with anger. We're not doing this, she said. I know. I'm serious, Ethan. We're not taking another loan from Victor Hale or anyone like him. I agree with you. That stopped her. You do? You were right. It's a trap. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually it'll be a trap, and I'm tired of walking into traps. He helped her up onto the wagon. We stick to the plan. Make our payments, save what we can, expand only when we can afford it with our own money. Clara studied him like she was looking for the catch. You're sure? I'm sure. Something in her expression softened. Not much, but enough to notice. Good, because I don't want to be right about this. They rode home in silence, but it was a different kind of silence, less hostile, more companionable. When they got back, Moss was waiting in the yard, pacing. We've got a problem, he said. Ethan's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Cattle. 3 head missing from the north pasture. Missing or dead? Missing. Fences cut, tracks leading east. Someone took them. The bottom fell out of Ethan's world. Rustlers? Maybe. Or maybe someone sending a message. Claire got down from the wagon. Show me. They walked to the north pasture in the fading light. The fence was cut clean, not broken, cut. Wire snipped, posts undisturbed, and the tracks were clear even to Ethan's untrained eye. Multiple horses, driven cattle, heading east toward the river. This was planned, Clara said. Someone knew exactly where to cut, exactly how many to take without it being noticed right away. Who would do this? Ethan asked. Moss spat. Take your pick. You've made a lot of people angry these last few months. Hendrickson, Morris, maybe others we don't even know about. Or Victor, Clara said quietly. We just refused his deal. This could be retaliation. That's insane. Victor would do whatever makes him money or proves a point. We just proved we won't be manipulated. Maybe this is his way of reminding us what happens when we don't play along. Ethan wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because Clara's logic made a horrible kind of sense. What do we do? He asked. We track them, Moss said. Tonight, while the trail's fresh. Get them back if we can. And if we can't, then we report it and hope the law actually does something. They went back to the house to prepare. Moss gathered supplies while Clara packed food and Ethan loaded his rifle. It felt surreal, preparing to hunt down stolen cattle like they were living in some dime novel instead of the modern age of 1893. I'm coming with you, Clara said. No. Yes. Clara, it's dangerous. I can ride and I can shoot, and you need someone watching your back who isn't going to trust the first convenient explanation. She pulled on a coat. I'm coming. Ethan looked at Moss, who shrugged. She's probably right. 3 sets of eyes are better than 2. They rode out as the sun set, following tracks that were easy enough to read in the soft earth, east toward the river, then south along the bank. The cattle had been moved fast but not panicked. Whoever took them knew what they were doing. 2 hours in, they found the remains of a campfire, still warm. They stopped here, Moss said, kneeling by the ashes. Maybe an hour ago. Can't be far ahead now. They continued, more cautiously. The moon was up, providing just enough light to see by. The tracks veered away from the river, cutting through brush toward... That's Hendrickson's land, Clara said. Ethan felt his blood run cold. You sure? I checked property maps last month. Everything east of Cutter's Creek is Hendrickson's grazing land. They followed the tracks to a makeshift corral, just rope strung between trees, but enough to hold 3 confused cattle. 2 men sat by a fire, rifles within reach, not particularly worried about being caught. Ethan recognized one of them, Burke, one of Hendrickson's ranch hands. Stay here, Ethan whispered. He started to move forward. Clara grabbed his arm. What are you doing? Getting our cattle back. There's 2 of them and 3 of us, but they're armed and we're approaching their camp. This is how people get shot. So what do you suggest? We go back. We get the sheriff. We do this legally. By the time we get the sheriff, they'll have moved the cattle or claimed they bought them fair. You know how this works, Clara. Law doesn't help people like us. Then we wait until they leave and take the cattle back ourselves. That actually made sense. Ethan looked at Moss, who nodded. They retreated to a safe distance and waited. An hour passed. 2 hours. The men by the fire showed no signs of moving. Then one of them stood up, stretched, and walked toward the trees. Toward them. Don't move, Moss breathed. The man, Burke, walked past within 20 feet, unbuttoning his pants. He was going to see them. In about 5 seconds, he was going to turn around and see them, and everything would go straight to hell. Clara stood up. Burke spun around, fumbling for his gun. Who's there? Just me? Clara stepped into the moonlight, hands visible. Clara Vance. Well, Clara Cross now. You probably don't remember me. Burke squinted. The store girl? What are you doing out here? Could ask you the same thing. Clara walked toward him, casual, like they'd met on a street corner instead of in the middle of the night, on stolen land with stolen cattle. Those are my cattle in that corral. Your cattle? Burke's hand stayed on his gun. I think you're confused, ma'am. These are strays we rounded up. Strays with Iron Ridge brands on Hendrickson land in a corral that wasn't here yesterday. Clara shook her head. That's not confusing, Burke. That's theft. You calling me a thief? I'm calling the situation what it is. She stopped about 10 feet from him. Behind her, Ethan could see Moss moving quietly to the right, circling. Question is, what are you getting paid to do this? Because I'm guessing not much. Hendrickson's cheap. Burke's face flushed. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. He's paying you to harass us, steal our cattle, cause enough problems that we can't make our loan payments. Then we lose the ranch and he can buy it for nothing at auction. Clara's voice stayed calm. Only problem is, we're not going to default, which means you're risking jail time for nothing. I'm not going to jail. You got no proof. I have tracks leading from my land to here. I have 3 cattle with my brand in your corral. I have you, standing here with a guilty conscience written all over your face. Clara took another step. And I have a choice for you. Let us take our cattle and walk away or explain all this to the sheriff. Your call. Burke looked torn. Ethan could see him thinking, calculating odds. Jake, Burke called back toward the fire. We got company. The other man stood up, grabbed his rifle. Everything happened fast. Moss stepped out from the trees, his own rifle aimed. Drop it. Jake hesitated. I said drop it. Jake dropped the rifle. Clara didn't move, didn't flinch, just kept her eyes on Burke. So, what's it going to be? Burke looked at her, at Moss, at his partner standing unarmed by the fire. Then he took his hand off his gun. Take your damn cattle, he said. But this isn't over. Yes, it is, Clara's voice went hard. Because tomorrow, I'm filing a report with the sheriff. And the next time someone touches our property, we're not going to be this polite. They took the cattle, cut the rope corral, got the animals moving toward home. Burke and Jake watched from the fire, not interfering. Ethan kept expecting them to change their minds, to go for their guns, but Clara had somehow diffused the whole situation without a shot fired. They rode back in tense silence, 3 confused cattle trailing behind. Dawn was breaking by the time they got home, everyone exhausted. Moss took the cattle to the pasture. Clara and Ethan stood in the yard, neither quite willing to go inside yet. That was stupid, Ethan said finally, walking up to an armed man in the dark. It worked. It could have gotten you killed. But it didn't, Clara pulled off her gloves. And now we have our cattle back and Burke knows we're willing to fight. He also knows we're alone out here, that we don't have help. We have each other. She looked at him. That's not nothing. They stood there as the sun came up, turning the scrub brush gold. Ethan thought about that phrase. We have each other. 4 months ago, they'd been strangers forced together by desperation. Now they were something else. Not quite partners. Not quite friends. But not strangers anymore either. I'm going to talk to the sheriff today, Clara said. File a formal complaint. It won't do any good. Burke will deny everything. I know, but I want it on record. The next time something happens, we'll have a pattern. You think there'll be a next time? I know there will. Clara started toward the house. This isn't over, Ethan. This is just the beginning. She was right. 3 days later, the barn burned. Ethan woke to Moss pounding on his door, shouting something about fire. He was down the stairs before his brain fully processed the words, Clara right behind him, and then they were outside and the world was orange. The barn was an inferno. Flames climbed the walls, eating through wood that had been dry for decades. The roof was already half gone, collapsing inward with showers of sparks that drifted toward the house on the wind. The horses! Moss was running toward the blaze. Moss, don't! But he was already inside, and Ethan was running after him because those were their horses, their livelihood, everything they couldn't afford to lose. The heat hit him like a physical wall. Smoke filled his lungs, choking, blinding. He could hear the horses screaming, the sound cutting through everything else. Moss had one by the halter, dragging it toward the door. Ethan grabbed another, felt its terror vibrating through the rope. They got both horses out, went back for the tack, the tools, anything that could be saved. The smoke was so thick now Ethan couldn't see 3 feet in front of him. His eyes burned, his lungs felt like they were full of glass. Clara appeared out of the darkness with buckets. The well! We need water! It's too far gone. The house isn't. She was already running back, and Ethan realized with cold horror that she was right. The wind was pushing embers toward the main house, toward the roof with its patched tarp, toward everything they'd spent 4 months building. They formed a chain, Clara at the well, Moss running buckets to Ethan, Ethan throwing water on the house roof and walls. Over and over until his arms screamed and his throat was raw and the barn finally collapsed in on itself with a sound like the world ending. The house survived, barely. Scorch marks on the west wall, a few small fires in the grass that they stamped out. But the barn was gone, just smoking ruins and the smell of burned wood that would never fully leave. They stood in the yard as dawn broke, covered in soot and ash, staring at the destruction. How? Moss asked. His voice was hoarse from smoke. How did it start? It didn't start. Clara was looking at the remains, her face hard. Someone said it. You don't know that? Look at the pattern. She pointed. Multiple points of origin. The fire started in 3 different places simultaneously. That's not accident. That's arson. Ethan felt something cold and furious settle in his chest. Burke? Maybe. Or someone Burke told. Clara turned to look at him. But it doesn't matter who lit the match. What matters is why. They're escalating. Cattle theft didn't work, so now they're destroying property. This is over $300 in damage, more if you count the tools and tack we lost. It's not about the money. It's about making us fail. Clara's hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, from, they want us scared. They want us to give up and walk away so they can take this place for nothing. Then they don't know us very well, Moss said. No, Clara agreed. They don't. The sheriff came out that afternoon, looked at the ruins, wrote some things in a notebook, and promised to investigate. His tone suggested he'd do no such thing. Could have been lightning, he said. There wasn't a cloud in the sky last night, Clara said. Could have been spontaneous combustion. Hay gets hot. Sometimes it... We didn't have hay in the barn. We store it in the covered pen by the north pasture. The sheriff looked annoyed at being contradicted. Well, I'll look into it, but unless you got witnesses or evidence pointing to a specific person, there's not much I can do. I filed a complaint 3 days ago about cattle theft. Now our barn burns down. You don't see a pattern? I see a lot of accusations and not much proof, Mrs. Cross. The sheriff closed his notebook. Maybe you folks should consider that running a ranch is hard work, and sometimes bad things just happen. Bad things don't just happen in 3 places simultaneously, Clara said, but the sheriff was already walking away. After he left, Ethan found Clara in what used to be the barn, sifting through ashes. What are you looking for? He asked. Evidence. Something we can use. She pulled out a piece of metal. Could have been from a lantern. Could have been from anything. But they were smart. They didn't leave anything obvious. Maybe the sheriff's right. Maybe we can't prove anything. Clara looked up at him, face streaked with soot. You believe that? No. Then we don't give up. She stood, brushing ash from her hands. We rebuild. We survive. We make them regret ever coming after us. With what money? Clara, we just lost everything we had stored for emergencies. The barn alone will cost... He didn't even want to think about the numbers. 400 to rebuild. Maybe 500 if we do it right. Clara's voice was steady. We have 700 in savings. We use 400 for the barn, keep 300 for payments and supplies. That doesn't leave us anything for emergencies. The emergency already happened. Now we deal with it. Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to say this was impossible, wanted to just sit down in the ashes and give up. But Clara was looking at him with those sharp eyes that had seen through every lie and excuse for 4 months, and he knew she wasn't going to let him quit. All right, he said. We rebuild. They spent the next week clearing debris and salvaging what they could. Moss knew a carpenter in Silver Creek who owed him a favor. The man came out, assessed the damage, and agreed to help rebuild for materials plus $200 in labor. That's generous, Clara said. That's because he knows you'll pay him, the carpenter said. Unlike half the folks around here who promise money they don't have. They started framing the new barn on a cold Monday morning in mid-December. Ethan and Moss did most of the heavy work while Clara managed supplies and kept the ranch running. She was everywhere at once, negotiating with Petersons for lumber, arranging delivery schedules, making sure the cattle were fed and the books stayed balanced. Ethan would catch glimpses of her throughout the day, always moving, always working, and wonder when she slept. If she slept. The second week of construction, Victor Hale rode out again. Ethan saw him coming and felt his jaw clench. Moss, take a break. Boss, I don't think... Take a break. Moss retreated, but not far. Clara came out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Victor dismounted, taking in the half-built barn with calculated interest. Heard you had some trouble. You could say that, Ethan said. Terrible thing, fires. So destructive. So expensive to recover from. Victor walked closer. I also heard you filed a complaint with the sheriff about cattle theft. And now this. Makes a man wonder if someone's trying to send a message. You know something about that? Clara asked. Me? No, but I hear things. I hear Arnold Hendrickson is still angry about being publicly accused of fraud. I hear some of his associates might be taking that anger personally. Victor paused. I also hear you're spending your savings on rebuilding instead of putting it toward your loan payments. Our payments are due in March, Ethan said. We'll have the money by then. Will you? Because from where I'm standing, you're about $400 poorer than you were a week ago. That's almost half a payment. Victor's smile was sympathetic, but his eyes were cold. I'd hate to see you come up short after working so hard. We won't come up short. I hope not. Because you remember Section 12 of your loan agreement, any default means the entire balance comes due immediately. That's roughly $17,000 now. Victor let that sink in. You don't have $17,000, Mr. Cross. Is there a point to this visit? Clara asked. Her voice was ice. The point is, I'm still willing to help. That land adjacent to your property? Still available. If you bought it with my loan, you'd have 200 more acres to work with. More room to grow, more revenue streams, more ways to ensure you can make your payments. We don't need more debt. You need more income. Debt's just the tool to get there. Victor pulled out a paper. I've had my lawyer draw up terms. 10% interest instead of 12. 15-year repayment instead of 10. Very generous considering your current situation. Clara took the paper, read it, and handed it back. No. Mrs. Cross, I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. You're offering us a noose disguised as a rope. You want us so deep in debt that we can never climb out. That way, when we inevitably miss a payment, you can take everything. She stepped forward. But here's what you don't understand, Mr. Hale. We're not that desperate anymore. Yes, we lost a barn. Yes, it's expensive. But we're still solvent, we're still making progress, and we're still not interested in your help. Victor's smile faded. You're making a mistake. We're making a choice. There's a difference. Choices have consequences, Mrs. Cross. So do threats. Clara's eyes narrowed. Was that you? The barn? I have no idea what you're talking about. You show up with a loan offer days after our barn burns down. That's either remarkable timing or remarkable planning. Careful. Victor's voice went hard. Accusations like that can get you in trouble. So can arson. So can conspiracy. So can fraud. Clara didn't back down. You want to play this game? Fine. But don't pretend you're here to help us. You're here to profit from our destruction, and I'll be damned if I let you. For a long moment, Victor just stared at her. Then he mounted his horse. You've got spirit, Mrs. Cross. I respect that. He turned the horse. But spirit doesn't pay loans. Come March, when you're short on your payment, remember I offered you a way out. He rode away, leaving Ethan and Clara standing in the unfinished barn. That was dangerous, Ethan said. So is letting him manipulate us. Clara was still staring after Victor. He knows something about the fire. Maybe he didn't light it himself, but he knows who did. Can we prove it? Not yet, but we will. The barn was finished 3 days before Christmas. It wasn't as big as the old one, wasn't as solid, but it stood and it would keep the horses and equipment dry. That was enough. Clara insisted on having a small celebration. Moss, Ethan, and her, standing in the new barn with coffee and the last of the preserves from the fall garden. To survival, Moss said, raising his mug. To stubbornness, Clara added. To not letting the bastards win, Ethan finished. They drank. It tasted like victory, small and hard-won. Christmas itself was quiet. Clara cooked a decent meal with the chicken she'd traded for with Peterson's wife. No gifts, no decorations, just food and the knowledge they'd made it through another crisis without breaking. My father used to love Christmas, Clara said quietly. They were sitting at the kitchen table after Moss had gone to bed. He'd close the store for the day, make a big dinner, invite anyone who didn't have family, said no one should be alone on Christmas. That where you learn to cook? That's where I learned a lot of things. How to manage inventory, how to deal with difficult customers, how to spot when someone's cheating you. She stared at her coffee. He was a terrible businessman, but a good man. I spent years trying to save his store, but you can't save something from itself. Is that what you think about this place? That you're trying to save it from itself? I think this place was worth saving. His store wasn't. She looked at him. There's a difference. Ethan wanted to ask what made Iron Ridge different. What made it worth the effort when her father's life work hadn't been? But the answer was probably something neither of them wanted to examine too closely. Thank you, he said instead, for everything. For the barn, for the books, for not giving up when you had every reason to. Thank you for letting me stay when you didn't have to. We're married. You don't need permission to stay. We're legally bound, Clara corrected. That's not the same thing. They sat in silence, the gap between them both smaller and larger than it had been 4 months ago. The new year came in cold and harsh. January meant snow, which meant harder work and higher feed costs. But the cattle were healthy, the barn was standing, and they had enough saved to make their March payment with a little left over. Then Victor's prediction came true. Ethan was in town getting supplies when he ran into Martin Driscoll outside the bank. The man looked uncomfortable. Mr. Cross, I need to speak with you. About what? Your loan. There's been a complication. Ethan felt his stomach drop. What kind of complication? Not here. Come to my office. They walked to the bank in silence. Driscoll's office smelled like cigars and desperation. He gestured for Ethan to sit, then pulled out a folder. Your next payment is due March 15th. That's $820 plus accrued interest, total of $873. I know, we'll have it. I'm sure you will. But there's been a change in the terms. Driscoll slid a paper across the desk. The bank has adjusted the interest rate on your restructured loan. Going forward, you'll be paying 10% instead of 8%. Ethan stared at the paper. You can't do that. We have a signed agreement, which includes a variable rate clause. Section 9, subsection 3. The bank reserves the right to adjust rates based on market conditions and borrower risk assessment. That wasn't in the original terms. It was. Page 4, paragraph 2. Driscoll's face was sympathetic but unmoved. I'm sorry, Mr. Cross, but this is legal. Your March payment is now $920 instead of $873. and all subsequent payments will be calculated at the new rate. Ethan felt the world tilting. They had budgeted for $873. They could make $873, but $920 meant cutting into savings they didn't have, meant another $100 they'd have to find somewhere. "This is Victor," he said. "I don't know what you mean." "Victor Hale. He's on your board. He pushed for this increase." Driscoll didn't deny it. "Mr. Hale is a valued member of our banking community. His recommendations carry weight. His recommendations are designed to destroy us. His recommendations are designed to protect the bank's interests. If you're unable to make the new payment amount, we'd be happy to discuss restructuring options." "Let me guess. Options that involve taking on more debt at even higher rates?" Driscoll said nothing. Ethan stood up. "We'll make the payment." "I hope so, for your sake." He walked out of the bank feeling like he'd just been robbed. Because he had been. Legally, systematically robbed by men in suits who knew exactly how to manipulate terms and conditions until they got what they wanted. Clara took the news with her usual composure, which meant her face went very still and her hands curled into fists. "Section 9, subsection 3, she said. "I read that clause. I thought it was standard boilerplate. Did it say they could raise rates?" "It said they could adjust rates based on risk. I thought that meant if we missed payments, not just because they felt like it." She pulled out their copy of the loan agreement, started reading. "There. The lender reserves the right to adjust interest rates based on market conditions and periodic borrower risk assessment at their sole discretion." That last part, sole discretion. That's the trap. They don't need a reason. They just need to want to. "So what do? "We make the payment. We don't have a choice." Clara did the math in her head. "We have $823 in savings. We need $920. That's $97 short. We can sell something. We've already sold everything we can afford to sell. The horses we need for work. The cattle are our revenue. The equipment is essential." She set down the paper. "We need to find $97 in 6 weeks. How?" "I don't know yet." That night, Clara went through every ledger, every invoice, every receipt looking for money they didn't have. Ethan watched her from the doorway, this woman who'd spent 5 months fighting for a place that wasn't even really hers, and felt something crack in his chest. "Clara, not now, I'm working." "Clara, stop." She looked up, exhausted and frustrated. "What?" "If we can't make it, we can't make it. There's no shame in—" "Don't." Her voice cut like a knife. "Don't you dare say we should give up. I'm saying maybe this is a fight we can't win." "Every fight is a fight we can't win until we do." Clara stood up, paper scattering. "You think I don't know the odds? You think I haven't spent every day for 5 months calculating the exact probability of failure? It's high, Ethan. It's really high. But it's not 100%. Not yet. And as long as there's a chance, I'm going to keep fighting." "Why?" The question burst out of him. "Why does this matter so much to you?" "Because it's mine." The words echoed in the small room. Claire's face was flushed, her hands shaking. "Because I've spent my entire life being dismissed and ignored and treated like I don't matter. And this place, this ranch, this impossible situation, it's the first time anyone has ever needed what I can do. It's the first time I've been essential instead of optional. So yes, I'm going to fight for it. Because if I lose this, I lose the only thing that's ever made me feel like I have value." The silence after that was crushing. Ethan crossed the room, took her hands. They were cold, trembling. "You have value, Clara. You've always had value. This ranch doesn't give you that. You brought that here with you. That's easy for you to say. You're, She stopped. "I'm what?" "You're someone. You own land. You have a name. You exist in the world in a way that matters. I'm just the spinster daughter of a failed shopkeeper who got lucky enough to marry a rancher desperate enough to take her." "That's not true." "It is true, and I'm fine with it. I knew what this was when I agreed to it, but don't ask me to give up the one thing that makes it bearable." Ethan pulled her closer, and for once she didn't resist. She just stood there, letting herself be held, letting herself be human instead of the calculating machine she'd turned herself into. "We'll find the money," he said. "How?" "I don't know. But we'll find it. Together. She pulled back, wiping her eyes quickly. I'm going to talk to Peterson's tomorrow. See if they'll buy our spring wool early. It's only about $30, but it's something. I'll check with some of the other ranchers, see if anyone needs temporary help. In the middle of winter? People need fences mended, roofs patched. There's always work if you're willing to do it. Clara nodded. Started gathering papers again, back to business. But something had shifted between them. Some wall had come down just enough for Ethan to see what was behind it. Fear and determination, and the kind of loneliness that came from being strong because no one ever gave you the option to be anything else. They spent the next 6 weeks hustling. Ethan took every odd job he could find, mending fences, helping with a barn raising, hauling supplies for the general store. Clara sold the spring wool early, negotiated a bonus from Peterson's for consistent business, and somehow convinced Morris to pay them for store credit she'd accumulated but never used. Dollar by dollar, they scraped it together. March 14th, the day before the payment was due, Clara counted out their savings, $918. We're $2 short, she said. Ethan almost laughed. After everything, after 6 weeks of grinding work and impossible choices, they were $2 short. I have $2, Moss said from the doorway. He'd been listening. He walked in and put 2 silver dollars on the table. Been carrying these for luck. Figure you need them more than me. Clara stared at the coins, then she pushed them back. We can't take your luck. It's not luck, it's payment for watching you two fight like hell for 5 months, worth every penny. This time, when Clara's eyes filled with tears, she didn't hide them. They rode into town the next morning, March 15th, and walked into Driscoll's office with exactly $920. Clara counted it out twice, made Driscoll sign a receipt, and kept the receipt in her hand the entire walk back to the wagon. We did it, Ethan said. We made one payment, Clara said. But she was smiling. They rode home through spring sunshine, past land that was starting to green up, past cattle that were healthy and thriving. The ranch wasn't saved yet. They had years of payments left, years of fighting, but they'd won this round, and sometimes one round was enough. That night, sitting at the kitchen table going over the books, Clara looked up at Ethan and said, 4 years and 2 months left. He knew what she meant, their sentence, the 5 years they were bound together by Section 12 of their loan agreement. Feels longer, he said. Feels shorter, she corrected. Then, quieter. I'm glad we're doing this together. Even if it's hard, even if it's impossible, I'm glad it's you. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. Yeah, me too. It wasn't love, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was partnership and respect and the kind of trust that came from standing back to back against the world. For now, that was enough. Spring turned into summer, and with it came the kind of heat that made everything feel like it was moving through molasses. But the cattle were thriving, the crops were coming in, and for the first time in years, Iron Ridge Ranch felt like something more than just a place Ethan was trying not to lose. Then Victor Hale showed up at the town council meeting in June with a foreclosure notice that had nothing to do with Iron Ridge. Clara heard about it from Peterson's wife when she went to pick up feed. They're taking the Carmichael place. Bank's foreclosing next week. The Carmichaels have been ranching that land for 20 years, Clara said. 22. But they missed 3 payments. Victor Hale bought up their debt from Frontier Trust, and now he's calling it all due. Mrs. Peterson leaned in, voice low. Word is, he's been doing this all over the territory, buying up distressed loans, then using technical violations to force foreclosure. He's already taken 4 properties this year. Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. What kind of technical violations? Missed payment deadlines by a day or 2, interest rate adjustments the borrowers didn't know about. One family lost their place because they underpaid by $11, and Victor claimed it was a material breach. That's not legal. It is if you read the fine print, and Victor Hale always reads the fine print. Clara thanked her and left, but her mind was racing. She went straight to the office and pulled out their loan documents, all of them, every contract, every amendment, every piece of paper they'd signed in the last 6 months. Ethan found her there 3 hours later, papers covering every surface. What are you looking for? Traps. Clara didn't look up. Peterson's wife told me Victor's been systematically foreclosing on ranchers across the territory using contract technicalities. I'm looking for what he's planning to use on us. We've made every payment on time. That doesn't matter if he can manufacture a default. Look, here, Section 15. Borrower agrees to maintain property insurance in amounts satisfactory to lender. What's satisfactory? We don't have a number. That means Victor can claim our insurance is insufficient anytime he wants. Ethan felt his chest tighten. We have insurance. For how much? I don't know. Whatever the policy says. Clara found the insurance documents, read through them. $2,000. That covers the house and barn, but not the land improvements, not the well, not half the equipment. Victor could argue that's insufficient and call us in default. That's insane. No one insures every single, doesn't matter what standard, matters what's in the contract. She kept reading, pulling out more papers. Here's another one. Section 21. Borrower shall not encumber the property with additional liens without lender consent. Did we get consent when Moss loaned us money for the well? That wasn't a lien, that was a personal loan. Did we document it as a personal loan? Did we have a contract? Because if we didn't, Victor could argue it was an informal lien and we violated the agreement. Ethan sat down heavily. You're saying he can destroy us anytime he wants. I'm saying he built in multiple ways to destroy us, and he's waiting for the right moment. Claire's face was hard. The question is, what do we do about it? They spent the next week trying to shore up every vulnerability they could find. Got written confirmation from Moss that his loan was personal, not secured by property. Increased their insurance coverage by taking on a second policy they could barely afford. Documented every payment, every transaction, every interaction with the bank. But Clara knew it wouldn't be enough, because men like Victor Hale didn't need legitimate violations. They just needed enough ambiguity to make a case that would cost more to fight than to settle. The attack came in July, but not from the direction they expected. Ethan was in town when he saw Burke, Hendrickson's man from the cattle theft, talking to the sheriff outside the general store. Burke saw Ethan, smiled, and walked away. The sheriff went into his office. Ethan followed. Sheriff, what was that about? Official business, Cross, nothing that concerns you. Burke works for Hendrickson. Anything involving him concerns me. The sheriff sighed. He filed a complaint. Says you and your wife trespassed on Hendrickson property back in November, threatened him with weapons, and stole 3 head of cattle. For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. That's a lie. Those were our cattle. He stole them from us. You got proof? We filed a complaint, which went nowhere because you didn't have evidence. Now Burke's got 2 witnesses saying they saw you on Hendrickson land with guns drawn, making threats. The sheriff pulled out a paper. I'm required to investigate. That means I need you to come in for questioning. This is Victor. He's behind this. This is Burke making an official complaint. You want to make counter-accusations, you're welcome to. But right now, I need you to answer some questions. Ethan rode back to Iron Ridge, feeling like the walls were closing in. Clara listened to the whole story, her face getting harder with each word. It's coordinated, she said. Victor's been buying up distressed loans all year, forcing foreclosures. But we're not distressed enough yet, so now he's manufacturing legal problems to make us vulnerable. How does a cattle theft accusation help him? Because if you're convicted, that's a criminal record. Section 18 of our loan agreement, borrower warrants they have not been convicted of crimes involving dishonesty or property violation. A cattle theft conviction would trigger that clause. I didn't steal anything? Doesn't matter. The accusation alone creates uncertainty, and uncertainty makes banks nervous. Clara paced the kitchen. He's going to keep manufacturing problems until we can't keep up. Legal bills, insurance costs, defending against false accusations. It all drains resources we need for loan payments. So what do? We fight back, but not the way he expects. Clara stopped pacing. Victor's been buying distressed loans, right? That means there's a paper trail, records of purchases, foreclosure proceedings, legal filings. If we can prove he's been systematically targeting ranchers using fraudulent contract interpretations, we can expose the whole operation. How do we prove that? We talk to the families he's already destroyed. We get their stories, their contracts, their foreclosure notices. We build a case showing a pattern of predatory lending and fraudulent foreclosure. Claire's eyes were bright with something dangerous. And then we take it public, force the bank to investigate, force the territory government to act, make it cost him more to continue than to stop. It was a massive undertaking. It would take time they didn't have and resources they couldn't spare. But looking at Claire's face, Ethan knew she'd already decided. "All right," he said. "Where do we start?" They started with the Carmichaels. The family had already been evicted, but they were staying with relatives in Silver Creek. Clara and Ethan rode out on a Saturday morning and found them living in a single room over a feed store, 7 people in a space meant for 2. Mary Carmichael looked 20 years older than the last time Ethan had seen her. Her husband John sat in the corner, staring at nothing. "I don't want to talk about it," Mary said when Clara explained why they'd come. "I understand, but if we don't stop Victor, he's going to do this to more families. You can't stop him. He owns half the judges in this territory." "Maybe, but we have to try." Clara pulled out a notebook. "Can you tell me about your loan, the terms, the payments, what led to foreclosure?" Mary was quiet for a long moment. Then she started talking. Their story was familiar. Restructured loan after a bad year, variable interest rates that jumped without warning, a payment that arrived one day late due to a mail delay. Victor had used that as grounds to declare the entire loan in default. When they tried to cure the default, he'd tacked on so many fees and penalties that the amount owed had nearly doubled. "We offered to pay everything," Mary said. "Sold our cattle, our equipment, everything. But Victor said it was too late. The foreclosure was already in motion and couldn't be stopped." She wiped her eyes. 22 years of work gone because of one late payment. And the worst part? Victor bought the property at auction for half what we owed. He made money destroying us. Clara wrote it all down. Asked for copies of their loan documents, foreclosure notices, any correspondence with the bank. They visited 4 more families over the next 3 weeks. Every story was the same: variable rates, technical violations, manufactured defaults. Victor Hale had perfected a system of legal theft, and no one had thought to fight back because fighting cost money they didn't have. But Clara had something the others didn't. She had rage and documentation skills and the absolute refusal to accept that this was how things had to be. By mid-August, she'd compiled a file 3 inches thick: loan documents, foreclosure notices, correspondence, witness statements. A pattern so clear that even a sympathetic judge would have to acknowledge it. "Now what?" Ethan asked. "Now we need leverage." Clara stared at the file. "Because even with all this evidence, taking on Victor Hale in court will cost thousands of dollars and take years. We need something that forces him to settle quickly." "What kind of something?" "I'm working on it." She worked on it for 2 more weeks, barely sleeping, going through every document with a precision that bordered on obsessive. Ethan would find her in the office at midnight, at 3 in the morning, always reading, always calculating. Then she found it. "Ethan," her voice was shaking when she called him into the office. "Look at this." It was a deed transfer. Victor Hale purchasing the Carmichael property at auction for $4,200, dated May 15th. "Okay, we knew he bought it. Now look at this." She pulled out another document. A loan sale agreement showing Victor Hale purchasing the Carmichael debt from Frontier Trust and Loan for $8,900. Dated May 10th. "I don't understand." He bought the debt for $8,900. 5 days later, he foreclosed and bought the property for $4,200. That's a $4,700 loss. So, maybe he made a bad investment. Victor Hale doesn't make bad investments. And look at the property value assessment from the county. The Carmichael land is worth at minimum $12,000. If Victor bought it for $4,200, he made a profit of almost $8,000. Clara's hands were shaking. But that only works if the foreclosure auction was rigged, if he suppressed bidding somehow, or if he had an arrangement with the auctioneer to keep other buyers away. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. That's fraud. That's criminal fraud. And if he did it once... She started pulling out more files, more auction records. The Patterson property, purchased for $3,100, worth $9,000. The Schneider place, purchased for $5,800, worth $15,000. Over and over, the same pattern. Victor buying foreclosed properties for a fraction of their value. He's rigging the auctions, Clara said. Every single one. He buys the debt, forces foreclosure, then suppresses competitive bidding so he can buy the property cheap. It's systematic, documented fraud. How do we prove the auctions were rigged? We talk to people who tried to bid. We get statements from anyone who was turned away or discouraged. We compare auction announcements to actual attendance. Clara was already making notes. This is it, Ethan. This is what brings him down. They spent the next week tracking down potential bidders. Most were reluctant to talk. Going up against Victor Hale was dangerous. But Clara was persistent, and eventually they found 3 ranchers willing to make sworn statements. All 3 told the same story. They'd shown up to bid on foreclosed properties, only to be told by the auctioneer that the sales had been postponed or canceled. Later, they'd learned the auctions had proceeded as scheduled, just without any competitive bidders present. Clara compiled everything into a formal complaint and took it to the territory's attorney general office. The clerk there looked at the file, looked at Clara, and shook his head. This is a serious accusation against a prominent businessman. These are serious crimes by a criminal who happens to be rich. Do you have any idea the kind of resources Victor Hale can bring to a legal fight? Do you have any idea how many families he's destroyed? Are you going to investigate or not? The clerk sighed. I'll pass it along to the Attorney General, but don't expect miracles. These things take time. We don't have time. Our next loan payment is due in 6 weeks, and Victor's going to manufacture another crisis before then. I can't control the timeline, ma'am. Clara left the office furious. They rode back to Iron Ridge in tense silence. It's not going to work, Ethan said finally. The Attorney General's office isn't going to move fast enough. I know. So what do we do? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, We force Victor's hand. The next morning, Clara rode into town alone and went straight to the newspaper office. The Silver Creek Gazette was a small operation, 1 editor, 1 printer, published weekly. The editor, a man named Samuel Worth, looked surprised when Clara walked in with her 3-inch file. Mrs. Cross, what can I do for you? I want to buy a full-page advertisement for next week's edition. That's expensive, $12. I'll pay $15 if you run it on the front page. Clara opened the file. And I want you to read this first, because what I'm about to publish is going to make some powerful people very angry, and you should know what you're getting into. Worth read for 20 minutes, his face getting harder with each page. When he finished, he looked at Clara with something like respect. You're accusing Victor Hale of systematic fraud. I'm publishing documented evidence of systematic fraud. There's a difference. He'll sue you into oblivion. He'll try. But first, he'll have to explain these auction records in court, and he'll have to do it publicly, with every rancher in the territory watching. Worth tapped the file. If I print this, he'll come after the paper too. If you print this, you'll be the editor who exposed the biggest fraud in territory history. Your circulation will triple. Clara leaned forward. I'm not asking you to editorialize. I'm not asking you to take a position. I'm just asking you to publish facts, dates, numbers, public records. Can you do that? Worth looked at the file for a long moment. Then he smiled. Front page, $15. But I want an exclusive on the follow-up story when Victor Hale goes down. Deal. The advertisement ran the following Wednesday. 1 full page listing every foreclosure Victor Hale had conducted in the last 2 years. The purchase prices, the auction dates, the property values. And at the bottom, in bold print, how many families have to lose everything before we investigate fraud? The reaction was immediate. By Thursday, half the territory was talking about it. Ranchers who'd lost their property were coming forward with their own stories. Families who'd been too scared to speak up before were suddenly finding their courage. The Attorney General's office was flooded with complaints, and Victor Hale was furious. He showed up at Iron Ridge on Friday afternoon with 2 lawyers and a lawsuit. Clara met him in the yard, Ethan beside her. You've made a serious mistake, Victor said, waving the newspaper. This is libel, defamation. I'm going to own this ranch when I'm done with you. Everything in that advertisement is public record, Clara said. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation, so sue me. I'll see you in court. You don't have the money for a legal fight. Neither do you, apparently, since you had to rig auctions to make a profit. Clara's smile was sharp. By the way, the Attorney General opened a formal investigation this morning. They'll be subpoenaing your records by Monday. Hope you kept good documentation. Victor's face went purple. You have no idea what you've started. I know exactly what I've started. I started the end of your little empire. Clara stepped forward. You thought you could destroy us like you destroyed everyone else. But you made a mistake, Victor. You underestimated how much I hate losing. This isn't over. You're right. It's not. Because on Monday, I'm filing a civil suit on behalf of every family you defrauded. We're asking for full restitution plus punitive damages. And we're asking for it publicly, in front of every newspaper in the territory. Clara's eyes were ice. So you can sue me for libel if you want. But while you're doing that, you'll be defending yourself against fraud charges, civil suits, and a federal investigation I'm pretty sure is coming once the territorial attorney general talks to his friends in Washington. Victor stared at her. Then he turned to Ethan. You're going to let her do this? She doesn't need my permission. She's her own person. She's going to destroy you both. She's going to destroy you, Ethan corrected. We're just watching. Victor left, his lawyers trailing behind him. Clara stood in the yard until the dust from his departure settled. That was dangerous, Ethan said. I know. He could still come after us. Let him try. But Victor didn't come after them, because by Monday, he had bigger problems. The Attorney General's investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Turned out, when you had documented evidence of fraud and public outrage demanding action, bureaucrats could actually work efficiently. They subpoenaed Victor's records, interviewed auction attendees, and within 2 weeks had enough evidence to file criminal charges. Victor Hale was arrested in early September on 12 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and illegal property seizure. The news spread through the territory like wildfire. The man who'd seemed untouchable, who'd destroyed families and accumulated property and power for years, was sitting in a jail cell waiting for trial. Frontier Trust and Loan, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal, offered settlements to everyone Victor had foreclosed on. Full restitution of property or cash value, plus compensation for damages. The Carmichaels got their land back. The Pattersons, the Schneiders, all of them. Families that had lost everything were suddenly whole again, and Iron Ridge Ranch's loan was forgiven entirely. Driscoll delivered the news himself, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. The bank has decided to cancel your outstanding debt as part of the settlement. You're free and clear. Clara took the document, read it carefully. This cancels everything? All remaining payments? All of it. Consider it our apology for Mr. Hale's actions. Victor Hale doesn't work for the bank. He was on our board. That's close enough for liability purposes. Driscoll looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. You're clear, Mrs. Cross. No more debt, no more payments. The ranch is yours. After he left, Claire and Ethan sat at the kitchen table, staring at the document. We're free, Ethan said. We're free, Clara echoed, but she didn't sound happy. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. This is what we fought for. She set the paper down. It's just Section 12, the marriage requirement. That was tied to the loan. If the loan's canceled, we can get divorced, Ethan finished. The 5-year requirement doesn't apply anymore. They sat in silence, the reality settling between them. They'd fought for 6 months to save this ranch, to survive, to make it work. And now they were free. Free of debt, free of Victor Hale, free of each other if they wanted. I'll talk to a lawyer, Clara said quietly. Get the paperwork started. Clara, it's fine. This was always the arrangement. We both knew it was temporary. What if I don't want it to be temporary? She looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, Clara looked vulnerable. What? What if I want you to stay? Not because of a contract or a loan or because we need each other to survive, just because I want you here. Ethan, you don't have to. I'm not saying it because I have to. I'm saying it because it's true. He reached across the table, took her hand. You're the smartest, toughest, most infuriating person I've ever met. You saved this ranch. You saved me. And somewhere in the last 6 months, you became the best part of my day. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I'm not easy to live with. I don't want easy. I want you. I'm difficult and opinionated, and I'll probably drive you crazy. You already drive me crazy. I'm willing to accept that as the price of admission. She laughed, and it sounded like breaking and healing at the same time. This is insane. We're supposed to be getting divorced. We're supposed to be doing whatever makes us happy. Does this make you happy? Clara looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, Yes, it does. Then let's not get divorced. Just like that? Just like that. She squeezed his hand. All right, we'll stay married, but I'm keeping separate books, and I still get final say on finances. I wouldn't have it any other way. They sat there, holding hands across the kitchen table, and Ethan realized this was what partnership actually felt like. Not a transaction, not a survival strategy. Just two people who'd chosen each other over and over until the choice became permanent. The trial happened in October. Victor Hale was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 15 years in prison. His assets were seized and distributed to his victims. The foreclosed properties were returned. The corrupt auction system was dismantled, and Iron Ridge Ranch thrived. With no debt hanging over them, Clara and Ethan could actually invest in improvements. They bought breeding cattle, improved irrigation, expanded their acreage. Moss got a raise. They hired 2 more hands for spring calving season. The ranch became something more than just a place they were trying not to lose. It became a home. Clara planted a real garden, vegetables and flowers both, because she'd decided they could afford beauty now. Ethan fixed up the house, replaced the tarp on the roof with actual shingles, painted the shutters. Small things that added up to a life instead of just an existence. And somewhere in all of that, the partnership became something else. It started small. Ethan noticing the way Clara's face softened when she was reading. Clara catching herself watching Ethan work, appreciating the strength in his hands. Conversations that lasted past dinner, past midnight, until they were both too tired to go upstairs to their separate rooms. The night they stopped using separate rooms wasn't planned. It was late November, cold enough that the house couldn't quite keep the chill out. Clara came downstairs to make tea and found Ethan doing the same. Can't sleep? He asked. Too cold. You? Same. They made tea and sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in blankets, talking about nothing important. The next cattle sale. Whether to plant wheat or corn in the spring. Moss's terrible jokes. At some point, Clara's hand found Ethan's under the table. At some point, the conversation faded into comfortable silence. At some point, Ethan said, You could stay down here, with me, if you want. Clara looked at him. Are you sure? I've been sure for months, just waiting for you to be ready. I'm ready. They went upstairs together to Ethan's room, and for the first time since this whole arrangement started, they were husband and wife in every sense that mattered. Winter passed into spring, and spring into summer. A full year since they'd stood in Driscoll's office and agreed to a marriage neither of them wanted. A full year since Clara had walked into Ethan's life and turned everything upside down. They were sitting on the porch one evening in late June, watching the sunset paint the grassland gold, when Clara said, I got a letter from my father's old lawyer today. About what? Apparently the store sold. The new owner paid more than I expected. We have an extra $600. We? It's mine, technically, but I'm married. What's mine is ours. She smiled. Strange how that works. Well, what do you want to do with it? I was thinking we could expand the herd or invest in better equipment or... She paused. Or we could take a trip, see San Francisco, stay in a hotel that doesn't smell like horses, act like normal people for a week. Ethan looked at her. You want to take a vacation? I want to spend time with my husband somewhere that isn't a ranch we're desperately trying to save. Is that crazy? No, that's probably the sanest thing you've said all year. They went to San Francisco in August, stayed in a hotel with actual running water and beds that didn't creak, ate at restaurants where the food came on real china, walked along the waterfront like tourists instead of ranchers who never stopped working. And for 1 week, they were just Ethan and Clara. Not survival partners, not business associates, just two people who'd chosen each other and were still choosing each other every single day. On their last night, sitting on the hotel balcony watching the city lights, Clara said, Thank you. For what? For not giving up. For trusting me. For making this into something real instead of just an arrangement. I should be thanking you. You saved my life. We saved each other, Clara corrected. That's what partnership means. They returned to Iron Ridge at the end of August, tanned and rested and ready to face another year of ranch work. The place looked good. Moss had kept everything running smoothly in their absence. The cattle were healthy, the crops were coming in strong, and the books showed they'd actually turn a profit this year. A real profit. Not just survival, but success. That night, lying in bed with Clara beside him, Ethan thought about how far they'd come. From strangers forced together by desperation to partners who'd fought their way through fraud and fire and impossible odds. From a transaction to something that felt an awful lot like love.
Clara? I love you. She turned to face him in the darkness. Say that again. I love you. I know that wasn't part of the deal. I know we said this was business, but I love you and I needed you to know. Clara was quiet for so long, Ethan thought he'd made a mistake. Then she said, I love you too. I have for months. I was just too scared to say it. Scared of what? Scared you'd think I was trying to trap you. Scared you'd feel obligated to say it back. Scared I'd turn this into something you never wanted. I want this. I want you. Every difficult, brilliant, infuriating part of you. She kissed him then, and it felt like coming home. The years that followed weren't easy. Ranching never was. They had bad seasons and good seasons, challenges and victories, moments where everything hung by a thread. But they faced it together, and that made all the difference. They never did buy that adjacent property. Didn't need to. Iron Ridge was enough. Enough land, enough cattle, enough life to build on. They expanded slowly, carefully, never overextending. Clara's ruthless financial management meant they always had reserves, always had options. Moss eventually bought his own small place 10 miles east, though he still came by weekly to help and complain about the coffee. They hired good hands, paid them fairly, and built a reputation as ranchers who kept their word. The community's perception of them shifted. Clara went from being the unwanted spinster who'd trapped a desperate rancher to being the woman who'd taken down Victor Hale. Respect followed, and with it, influence. She served on the town council for a while, helped establish fair lending practices, made sure no one else got destroyed the way so many families had been. Ethan stopped seeing himself as the man who'd failed and started seeing himself as the man who'd survived, who'd built something worth having, who'd found partnership in the last place he'd expected to look. And Clara finally let herself believe she was essential, not because of what she could do or manage or fix, but because of who she was. 5 years after that desperate wedding in Driscoll's office, they stood in the same office and renewed their vows. This time by choice, not necessity. This time with Moss and half the town as witnesses. This time with joy instead of resignation. Do you, Ethan Cross, take this woman to be your wife? I do. Again. Still. Always. Do you, Clara Cross, take this man to be your husband? I do. The kiss that followed was different from the nothing that had marked their first wedding. This kiss was real and earned and witnessed by people who knew exactly what they'd fought through to get here. Afterward, at the celebration that someone had organized without asking them, Moss raised his glass. To the stubbornest couple I've ever met. May you continue driving each other crazy for another 50 years. Here's to another 50 years of arguing about money, someone shouted. Here's to the woman who took down Victor Hale, another voice called. Here's to not letting the bastards win, Ethan said, echoing that night in the new barn when they'd had nothing but determination. Clara squeezed his hand. Here's to us. We earned this. They had earned it. Every hard-won dollar, every victory, every moment of peace. They'd started with nothing but desperation and a piece of paper that had bound them together, and they'd turned it into something neither of them could have built alone. Iron Ridge Ranch became their legacy, not because it was the biggest or the richest, but because it represented what could happen when two people refused to accept defeat, when they chose partnership over pride, collaboration over competition, each other over everything else. Years later, when people asked how they made it work, Clara would smile and say, "We stopped treating marriage like a transaction and started treating it like a choice we made every day." And Ethan would add, "Best choice I ever made." Because in the end, that's what it came down to, not the contracts or the loans or the 5-year requirement that had trapped them.
Just two people who kept choosing each other, day after day, year after year, until choosing became second nature. They'd been forced together by circumstance, but they'd stayed together by choice. And that made all the difference.